Hey, what's going on, everybody? I hope you're having a great start to your week. I was just thinking the other day, a lot of us who have been on social media for a long time and we post a lot, we just make the assumption that people really know our story and our background, right? We talk about our current things that are happening, and people who may just be getting introduced to us recently don't know the journey, right? That it took to get to wherever we are or wherever you are, right? From that standpoint, and we make all these glamorous posts about things that are happening, things that are exciting, and it sometimes, right? Some people just make the assumption that you've always been, or I've always been doing these types of things, but I wanted to kind of take a step back and kind of peel back the layers a little bit because I think it's important. Of course, I recently launched a new business, Paul Wilson Global Solutions, launched a new book, right, and just came back from Zimbabwe. It's all these things are happening that to some may seem like, wow, all these things are happening. But also it may look like, wow, these things are all over the place, or even for myself, right, how all these things tie together. So for me, I was like, let me pause, take a step back and share some more of my personal story that many of you, even if you've been following me online for a long time, may not know some of my journey. So I'm just going to encapsulate it a little bit on this video, but definitely I'll be sharing much more going forward because I think it's important for you to know who I am, what helped to shape and form me where I am now, and even the projects or the activities that I engage in now, what really compels me or motivates me in this space. So I didn't grow up in this entrepreneurial space, right? I grew up wanting to be the C-level executive, right, with the corner office. That was my goal coming out of college, and it didn't work out quite like that. I wasn't moving up fast enough. So eventually I did resign from my company where I worked for Georgia Power, and supply chain is my background. Left there, started my own consulting company, and things actually were going well initially until the Great Recession hit. So this has been, 2008, 9, 10. And my business pretty much bottomed out. Things, it seemed like they were starting to elevate and accelerate and just literally crashed, right? Ultimately, not just the economy, my own personal business. But it's interesting, around that same time, though, I launched my first book that was published, Dream Big in 3D, How to Pursue a Bold, Innovative, God-Inspired Life. And so for a long time, even then, and even leading up to then, my motivation, even writing that book, I'm passionate about helping people connect to their purpose. So passionate about it, right? I wrote a book about it. I had a coaching program and helping entrepreneurs and employees trying to navigate the space of their purpose, right, as it relates to their role in the marketplace, again, as an employer or an entrepreneur. So this has been in me for a long time to engage in that way. Even had an online TV show called Passion in Action, where I was interviewing leaders and entrepreneurs and others doing great work in the community. And this is before podcasting really took off, right? So I was one of the, I don't want to say early pioneers, but I was doing it for a long time before it was really popular and made popular by a lot of people. But eventually, everything literally just took a downturn to the point where our house got foreclosed on, right? I was married, still married, fortunately. 3 children at that particular time. Eventually had another while we literally were going through a season of homelessness, right? We're moving from house to house, couch to couch, hotel to hotel. Probably spent most of our time, almost for 4 to 5 years, in a hotel or extended stay type situation. And it was not fun. It was not pleasant. But you would have never known that because online I was posting, right, and coaching others and helping others like everything was great. And for me, let me just say this, I was ashamed of my situation. So that's why I didn't talk about it then, because I was ashamed, right? How are you going to be the business coach and you're the one struggling? You're the one homeless, right? Pretty much. You're the one that's going through these difficult situations. So I didn't know how to process it then. And it was very difficult, right, in that season, financially, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and in every way. But eventually, as things started to get a little bit better, I was able to transition to finally go get some part-time work, right? And I was coaching, training, and assisting people on how to go get a job, right? And so that began to move things back in a positive direction, although I was still living in an extended stay hotel situation. At least I started to have some income come in on a consistent basis, which that wasn't the case or hadn't been a case for a while right there from that standpoint. But eventually that led to the door being open for me to actually wind up at Georgia State as a business consultant in the Small Business Development Center. But one of the key things that is critical about that is when you stay on purpose. So for me, I was still in that space of helping other people find their purpose. Although I was struggling mightily, I was still locked in on how do I help other people find their purpose as I was still searching for my own. And being able to get back into a space of Georgia State where now I'm consulting entrepreneurs, that allowed me to be in line with my purpose, but to begin to now connect not only the purpose side of it, but now profitability, if you will, right? So that I could be profitable for my family. I'm not even talking about rich. I'm just talking about let me have more coming in, right, than I have going out, right? That's the basic bottom line definition of profits. And so in that case, I was able to again transition in finally back into full-time employment. But when you get in your position, that path can begin to accelerate. So literally within about a year and a half, I got promoted to the area director. So went from consultant to now leading the entire center at Georgia State. And then from there, moving on to the Russell Innovation Center as Vice President of Innovation Entrepreneurship, and then eventually to the Urban League as Vice President of Programs and Community Impact. And so with that, things accelerated quickly once I was able to get into a different mindset, right? Different perspective, still locked into my purpose, but now in a different position. But then also being in those roles at the Russell Center and the Urban League allowed me to get connected to global business opportunities, right? And here's the thing I didn't say at the beginning. Since about 2006, I've had a desire, after having a chance to go on a mission trip to Rwanda, I had a desire to do business in the African diaspora. That was a life-changing experience for me, but that was 2006. And now the first time I had the chance to go back to the continent was literally 2023. It was 17 years, right, before I had a chance to go back to the continent. But as God has a plan for all of us, and sometimes things don't work in our timing, right? They only work in His. And so being in position opened the door, right, for these global business opportunities, and not just in Africa, but also in South America. And so with that, it reignited a desire that I had literally back in, now almost 20 years ago, back in 2006, in this global business engagement. And so now that I'm running my own firm again and getting to hone in even more in this global aspect, again, it just allows me to see how, one, again, God's purpose for us doesn't change. His plans for us doesn't change. But then also the things that are in our hearts, sometimes it takes time for those things to flourish. It takes time for them to develop. It takes time for them to manifest into reality the things that we have in our minds. And so this trajectory, as you see, wasn't a straight line, right? A lot of dips and twists and turns and seasons that I appreciate now, but I despised then, right, as I was going through them. Some unexpected positive benefits, all types of relationships and connections, of course, that have happened during this time. But the bottom line that I want to kind of point out is you have to stay locked in who God has called you to be. And just because the season has changed, your purpose doesn't change. However, how your purpose looks may change. Because I definitely can tell you, although I felt I had a really comfortable and solid understanding what my purpose was in 2010 when I wrote that first book, had no idea how that would actually play out, right, over these last 15 years since that book has been written. But now that I'm in a place of seeing the reality of things I wrote literally almost 15 years ago and had a desire almost 20 years ago, literally seeing that play out right now, I couldn't have written a script of how it would play out, right, from that standpoint. And I'm still learning things every day, just as I'm sure as you are too, about yourself and about your purpose. And so this is also an encouragement to let you know that wherever you are on your journey, it is not by accident, right? Even if you think you made some mistakes along the way. But guess what? God is big enough, His grace is strong enough to even incorporate our mistakes and even bad decisions that we make along the way to still get us to where we're supposed to be. So for all of us, right, our journeys are not a straight line. It's not a straight path. Success, especially in the social media world, we like to create these simple formulas of what success looks like. Success is not the same for everybody, right? And it also depends on how you define success. But the path to get there is not the same for everybody. No matter how much good information, insight we can get from others, we still have to apply it to our own individual context. And while those principles are very true, the application could be different for each one of us, right, as we go through this journey. So I'm going to pause right here. Again, I have a lot more really to share because, again, I still skim the surface, right, of my story. But I just wanted to get just a little a little insight, and I'm going to be sharing more because I think it's important, right, for you to not just see the successes, but see the scars. And trust me, I got a lot of scars that I haven't been as comfortable to share over the years. But I'm going to be doing more of that because, again, I think it is important for people not just to see this polished image and that we kind of, glamorize when, and for most of us, if we're honest, right, the behind the scenes does not look even close to as good, right, as things look to everybody else and how we like to make them look from that standpoint. So hopefully this has been a blessing to you. Hopefully it encouraged you to share more of your story also. All right, God bless you. I'll see you on the next one.